All right, to our first conversation now. Nigeria Labour Congress, Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, and the Nigeria's Employers Consultative Association, NEC, have raised alarm over the continued free fall of the Naira, asking the federal government to take urgent steps to stabilize the national currency. Well, let's hear more now from Mr. Adewale Smart Oyerinde, Director General of NECA, joining me via Zoom from Geneva. Great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
So, how are businesses and employers, navigating the distortions in the FX market, and how much can businesses and employers, take at this time with the distortions?
Well, thank you. It's quite obvious for everybody to see whether you are in business or you are not in business. The consequences of it will hit you and hit you very hard. For organized businesses, it's been quite difficult planning. You make projections in January, and the rate at which things are changing is quite alarming. That you find it difficult to keep up with that level of change. The disruption to operations is quite obvious. The cost of inputs and cost of imports has also significantly increased, and this creates a negative value chain, because as the cost of input and cost of import continue to increase, it affects the cost of goods and services. As the cost of goods and services continue to increase, you also run, as a business, you run the risk of increasing unsold stocks, because if the capacity and ability of the consumer to purchase is not meeting the rise in cost of goods and services, then the ability to buy will be constrained also. And as that is happening to you as a business, because you can't sell and you can't also arbitrarily increase prices, you are forced to contract. You start reducing your capacity utilization, and as you reduce capacity utilization, there's also risk for job losses, loss in profit, with the whole gamut of consequences for the economy as it were. So it's been quite challenging. It's been quite unfriendly as per the environment. And we're just hoping that the plan by the federal government to come up with new forex rules will materialize very quickly.
And most times, we know sometimes, challenges, bring about, innovations. And you did mention, the rising costs of inputs and imports at this time. Are there any conversations about, sourcing some of these inputs locally?
Now, during the last administration, and we know that the Ministry of Trade and Investment and the central bank also encourage backward integration, which we feel strongly is one of the ways to go, one of the things we must deliberately encourage. Now, government policies sometimes create a different dynamics. We call it policy somersault. You as a business have invested massively on the issue of backward integration. Probably you've invested in wheat production, you've invested in dairy production, and one night or one morning you wake up and see government has opened up the borders for importers to bring in those goods. So it creates a level of uncertainty for you. But definitely backward integration, sourcing those materials, those inputs locally, is the medium term and the long term strategy that can help us not only to remain sustainable as businesses, but also to address the issue of forex that government is having. If we can source those materials locally with support from government, then the pressure on forex, the pressure to get forex to import, will also significantly reduce.
And how are employers, managing employees, at this time? Because currency devaluation, inflation, they impact, workers heavily, because wage growth is not as fast as inflation and devaluation. So, how are employers managing to manage employee expectations, right now? Because I'm sure the dynamic must be quite, difficult.
For the organized private sector, we say is double jeopardy. As you are struggling with the issues of an inhospitable environment, you are struggling with regulatory and legislative harassment. At the same time, you have to deal with the cost of doing business. You have to deal with high interest rates. You have to deal with so many issues, and you also have the employees to. You have to manage the expectations of the employee. We've consistently engaged, our members have consistently engaged their employees so that the reality on ground will not be lost on all of us. But we must commend, and this is quite important for us to commend the resilience and doggedness of Nigerian businesses. In spite of these challenges, many businesses have taken the bold move to increase salaries, taking the bold move to support the employee in cash and kind. And some have come up with different models of working from home to also reduce the pressure of the employee on the road. This is before the government came up with the wage award. So the private sector has taken the lead, and we are still taking the lead. But I must say that it's not comfortable, it's not convenient, and we hope the situation will change for the better quickly.
Yeah, hopefully. But what's the experience with your members when it comes to employee retention at this time?
Well, our commitment to employee retention is very high. In 2029, 2020, 2019, 2020, we actually had an MOU with organized labor at the height of COVID, when production was low, when businesses were bleeding and bleeding terribly. We had an MOU with labor then, organized labor, that employers will do whatever is necessary, that the employer will not retrench staff during that period. And employers kept faith with that commitment. Now, that commitment still stays. Retrenchment is not the first option for employers. The option is to do all that is necessary, innovatively, in whatever context, to make sure that we don't escalate the issue of unemployment in this country. When it's difficult, our commitment to continue to create jobs still remains.
And talking about organized labor now, what's your outlook for industrial actions in 2024?
Well, the national minimum wage will the conversation or the negotiation will start hopefully before the end of this year. We've received a letter from the Ministry of Labour requesting for our nomination at the organized private sector. That will be done in the next 1 or 2 days. Hopefully, the negotiation will start in December, January, for us to have leveraging on Convention 131 of the ILO on minimum wage fixing. Hopefully, we get a new minimum wage in 2024. Now, on this industrial action, for government, and I must say this responsibly, for government, the government have the capacity to borrow. Government have the capacity to print money to fund its activities. The private sector doesn't have that luxury. For every 1 naira you borrow from the bank, you are constrained to pay the capital and also the principal and also the interest. Your loan payment, your repayments doesn't go on strike. Those liabilities to vendors, internal and external, they don't go on strike. Disruptions, your creditors will not look at the business that they didn't work and they will suspend the payment of your loan. It doesn't happen like that. So the dynamics in the private sector is different. And that's why we are making stakeholders to see, look, government can go ahead, shut down, labor can shut down government businesses because government have the capacity to manage it. The private sector doesn't have the capacity to manage it, especially when the private sector has consistently lived up to its expectation, continue to pay salaries, continue to provide a hospitable environment for businesses, for its employees, and continue to strive to create decent jobs for citizens. So the dynamics differs. We are hoping that with the whole conversation that is going on, the industrial relations atmosphere in 2024 will be more climate, will be more temperate, and will be more peaceful. That is our expectation.
And talking about the government, having the ability to print, at this time, we're still reeling from the 23 trillion, printed last time, and the government is still struggling with, payment of interest on that ways. So I don't know if they have the luxury to print, at this time. But talk to me about how, the depreciation of the naira has impacted the ability of Nigerian business to operate and compete, in the global market.
The global market is a different ball game, and sometimes we wonder if government is not playing lip service to the context of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. The agreement creates a dynamics where free flow of goods and services within the context of these different protocols. Now, if we are committed to the AFCFTA as government has said, then the responsibility that government has is to make sure that local businesses are not only sustainable, but they are competitive. So that the goods that are coming from overseas, from African countries, doesn't become the undertakers for local businesses. Because if the goods coming from overseas, if they are cheaper than the goods produced in this country, then the consequences is that you strategically kill local industries, and you kill their ability to compete. So the issue of forex is a big one, and we just hope government will address the issue of supply. I think fundamentally is the issue of supply. And economics 101, from our understanding, says that if demand is higher than supply, then the price will go up. If supply is higher than demand, then the prices will come down. If we don't address the issue of supply, forex supply, we'll continue to have this discussion. In your earlier report, it shows that there are 144 oil theft incidents in 7 days. Those are leakages that governments need to plug. We need to promote local production so that our propensity to import will reduce. We need to fix the refinery so that our propensity to import fuel will also reduce. So once we block all those leakages, we call them leakages, where the areas where pressure has been put on your forex, then progressively Naira will continue to appreciate.
All right, before I let you go now, give us a sense of the kind of conversations you're having with the government, right now, the kind of demands to help alleviate the challenges and the pressures businesses are having to go through at this time.
Well, the conversation remains ongoing. We've sent our position paper to government on the palliatives on the interventions now, not palliatives, on interventions that are needed. And we appreciate the effort of the Presidential Committee, Taiwo Oyedele Presidential Committee on Fiscal and Monetary Policy Reforms. And we've also seen the recommendation of that committee, the far-reaching recommendation of that committee, and we hope that the implementation of the recommendations of the committee will start in earnest. We've also discussed issues concerning trade, promotion of trade and non-oil exports. Last year we had early this year, sometime in June, we had our employer summit where the team was promoting trade and non-oil export. And also lastly, we are also urging government to address the issue of skills development with specific focus on technical and vocational skills, which is part of the conversation that is going on at the ILO currently. Technical and vocational skills and apprenticeship as a form of addressing the issue of unemployment globally.
All right, thank you so much. We'll keep tracking progress there. Thank you so much, Mr. Adewale Smart, here the Director General, NECA. And thank you for matching my suit color. It's kind of similar.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll take a look at how your money performed on the AFEX commodities exchange market. That's in a moment. Do stay with us.